Last time we talked about beef and four-legged beasts and how to cook them. Today we're going to talk about poultry and seafood and go over a couple of consumer skills when you're purchasing any type of animal product. So poultry. Poultry is kind of the broad term that just means any bird that you raise for food. So in the United States, we're the most familiar with chicken and turkey, but duck is also popular. Pigeons are actually raised for food. When you do that, it's called squab, not pigeon. But anything can be raised for foods, or any bird can be raised for food, ostrich, all kinds of things. Now, with poultry, there's less fat and calories than red meat, so it does make a healthier choice to choose chicken or turkey over steak because it has less fat. Most fat is in the skin, or right under the skin, I should say. So if you like to peel that skin off of the turkey and eat it, that's where most of the fat is kind of hiding. Now you can buy poultry, it's whole, like we're familiar with the Thanksgiving or turkey, but you can, like rotisserie chickens, you can do that at home yourself. It's sold in pieces. There's a breast, a wing, a thigh, and a drumstick. Sometimes they keep the leg with the thigh together, but it's sold in pieces. Or it can be all ground up, like hamburger, so ground turkey or ground chicken. A lot of people, if they're trying to watch their fat consumption, they'll use ground turkey instead of ground beef for things like tacos. Now, with poultry, there's two different kinds of meat on the bird. There's white meat, and that comes from the breast, and it has less fat. Now, because of that, there can be a tendency as you're cooking chicken breast to have them dry out because there's not fat in there to keep them moist. So you need to be really careful if you're only cooking chicken breast that you're not drying it out. The dark meat is the legs, the thigh, and the wings. These ones have more fat, and so they're a little bit more forgiving when you cook them because that fat keeps them tender. Now, some people do not like dark meat. They only like the white meat. So it's just kind of a personal preference. The only thing you need to remember is that the white meat has less fat, dark meat has more fat, and it's a little bit more forgiving. Now, with poultry, because of how we've sort of changed how they're raised and they don't fly, we kind of clip their wings if they're raised for food. You can use any cooking method to cook poultry. There isn't going to be a designation between locomotion muscles and support muscles like there is in beef. So it doesn't matter if you're using dry methods, moist methods, or those two combination methods. Poultry is very forgiving and you can use any method to cook it. When you're cooking poultry, make sure that you're cooking it to 165 degrees. If it's in pieces, it's 165. If it's whole, it's 165. Ground up, it's always 165, so we can make sure we're killing that salmonella. Now with seafood, we have two categories of seafood, and then within each category, we have two subcategories. So we're going to start with fin fish, or what we just call fish. All right, and within that, there's the two subcategories. We have freshwater. Does the fish swim in fresh water, like lakes, streams, rivers? Or is it saltwater, which would be the ocean? Both kinds can be wild or farm raised. Now, sometimes farm raised can be a little bit questionable because the farms, let's just be honest, they can get really, really dirty. All right. Wild, if the company is not using sustainable methods to catch those fish and then put eggs or whatever back into the ocean, that can also be a problem too. So there is kind of like a wild or farm fresh. There's pros and cons to each. So examples of fish are like trout, salmon, halibut, cod, just the things that we consider fish. Now the next category is shellfish, and the two subcategories within that are crustaceans, which are shrimp, lobster, and crab. And then there's mollusks, clams, mussels, oysters, and scallops. Any fish, whether it's a fin fish or a crustacean, a shellfish, mollusk, needs to be cooked to 145 degrees. If you are someone who likes sushi, you need to ask for something that's called sashimi grade. All right. It is very strictly regulated because you're eating it raw. And so there's like a lot of quality controls it has to go through to be listed as sashimi grade. Do not just go to Macy's and buy raw tuna and make sushi with it. You will get sick. All right, you need to request that sashimi grade. It's not available in Tooele unless you ask for it, and then it's going to take a couple of days for whichever meat department you ask for it to get here to Tooele. All right, whether it's beef, poultry, or seafood, all of those things do contribute a significant amount of fat to our diet, and so we need to make an effort to keep the meat and the poultry, seafood lean. So a couple of tips to help keep it lean or low fat is to trim away all visible fat. All right, trim away the fat around the steak. You can't really do anything about the marbling in the middle, but you can take off those fatty edges on the outside. Same thing with chicken. When you're cutting up chicken, just cut away that fat and throw it out. Use a low-fat cooking method. Broil, grill, roast. Those are your 3 dry cooking methods. All right, and then the 2 moist cooking methods are poach or boil. All right, neither or none of these add fat, whether it's oil or butter or anything. You're just using the heat of the oven or boiling liquid to cook it. If you're cooking things like ground beef or bacon, drain off any fat that appears during cooking. Dab it with paper towels to collect as much as you can so that you're not adding that to your recipe. Skip or limit the breading. The breading adds calories, and typically if things are breaded, that also means they're fried, which is not low fat. So try and just, like, when you have the option, choose grilled over fried. And then prepare it without high fat sauces or gravies. Typically sauces are high in fat, so try and limit those or do without. All right, nutrients that we get from meat, poultry, and seafood. Number 1 is protein. It's why we eat it. All right, because we are building and repairing our cells. We also get minerals and vitamins like iron, zinc, phosphorus, and the B vitamins. Now, the USDA recommends that everybody have 8 ounces of seafood each week. And I know that's kind of hard because we live in Utah. We don't have access to great seafood, except maybe trout if you're a fisherman. But the reason they recommend 8 ounces of seafood a week is because they're high in omega-3 fatty acids, and those help lower cholesterol, and it helps with brain function. It keeps your brain healthy. There are some studies out there that say that these omega-3 fatty acids prevent Alzheimer's. So the USDA really wants everybody to try and have 8 ounces of seafood a week. I mean, a tuna sandwich would do the trick. Salmon would be better. It's a little bit higher in omega-3 fatty acids, but try and get seafood at least once a week. All right, when you go to buy meat, a couple of things to keep in mind are the inspection and the grading. So the government agency that's in charge of inspection and grading is the USDA. And if it's sold in the United States, it has to be inspected. What they're inspecting it for is wholesomeness and healthfulness before and after the animals are slaughtered. So there should be a USDA representative at every slaughterhouse watching the animals come in. They should be able to walk in of their own volition. All right, that means they're healthy. All right, then they watch the slaughtering process, and then they make sure that as the meat is cut up and stored that it's healthy. Now, meat grading is based on marbling, so the flecks of fat that run through, the maturity, so how old was the animal, and then the muscle conformation. Does the muscle look how it's supposed to look? Does it look pretty or good to eat? Now, poultry grading is based on size, the flesh quality, so what does the actual muscle look like, and visible defects. Now, inspection is mandatory, but grading is voluntary. It is the grocery store chain that says, I want to pay for the meat to be graded, because it helps sell the meat. Because meat and poultry are expensive, especially beef is like outrageously expensive. And we as consumers want to know that when we're buying a steak, we are getting the best quality. So the 3 grades that are available to consumers are prime, choice, and select. Select is probably not the best one. Like if you compare these 3 steaks, you can see there's very little marbling. So it's not going to be a bad cut of meat. But as you go up and you pay a little bit more for those grades, you're going to have a better, more tender piece of meat. So just remember, inspection is mandatory. It's to keep us healthy, hopefully prevent food poisoning, and then grading is voluntary just because it helps sell meat. All right, now when you go to buy chicken or poultry, you need to keep in mind how much people eat. All right, so if it's boneless, whether it's steak, pork chops, ham, chicken breasts, people are going to eat about 1/4 pound per person. So 1/4 of a pound per person. If it has a moderate amount of bone, that would be like pork chops or a T-bone steak. That's about 1/2 pound per person. You need to compensate for how much weight that bone takes up. And then if it has a large amount of bone, like turkey and ribs, you need to think that people are going to eat about 1 pound per person. So if on Thursday you have 12 people coming over for Thanksgiving, which you hopefully don't because of COVID, social distancing, guys, you need to have at least a 12-pound turkey. That's not going to leave you very much for leftovers, if any. All right, so because everybody's going to eat about 1 pound of turkey. So that's how you kind of figure it. All right, go and answer the few questions about poultry, seafood, and consumerism regarding meat products, and I will talk to you guys on Wednesday. Have a great day.